Hey, what's happening, YouTube? What's going on, guys? Hopefully, you guys are having a good Sunday morning. I'm having my Sunday morning coffee here, and I figured we'd crank out a video. The title of today's video is going to be "Is this the end of college as we know it?" Article from the Wall Street Journal. I apologize. The screen portion of this video is going to be kind of ugly. This article comes to us from Wall Street Journal, which is always pay-gated. If you guys ever need to get around to Paygate, there's a couple apps and services that'll do it, but kind of a good way to do this is using a website called outline.com. You can normally put outline.com / in front of a link of a paywalled article you want to read, and you're normally able to read it. If that doesn't work, put the link to the article through a link shortener like bit.ly or something similar prior to putting outline.com in front of that shortened bit.ly link, and that will almost assuredly let you read the article. So somehow I was actually able to pull this full article up with pictures and everything the other day, and for some reason it's not working for me this morning. So bear with me here. But today's video is going to be talking about, like, is this the end of college as we know it? And I may have done, when we talk about college and kind of choosing a career path, that's a topic that pretty much every entrepreneurial make money online entrepreneur guru online has talked about, from Alex Becker to Cody Hawk and everybody else. I myself have done a few videos on this topic, and I think since COVID, since the pandemic, I think I've also done a couple other articles, a couple other stories on, is this going to be the end of college? And this article actually takes a little bit of a different spin on it, right? So I think a lot of people are finding that there's not necessarily the ROI with college that there was 10, 20, 30 years ago. I think back in the 60s, like 9% of people went to college. As of the past couple of years, it's up to like 36% or 40%. So there's somewhat of an inflation on college degrees, right? College degrees aren't as rare and aren't as valuable as they were before. And also the cost of a college education has skyrocketed, whereas wages haven't really gone up that much. And so this article kind of goes at it from a perspective of, is college really the best way to learn? Is college really the best way to prepare young people for the workplace? Or would it be better to take some type of like short-term program or certification? Or would it be better to do some type of continuing education where people are continuing to learn throughout their careers? And this article kind of looks at how that may be a better way. But something I had talked about in some recent videos was, is the pandemic going to kill college, right? Because let's be honest, a large part of why people go to college, besides obviously getting an education and wanting a better career and a better life, which college may or may not any longer provide, part of it is a social aspect, right? Living in the dorms, going to the football games, partying with your friends. Like, the college lifestyle is a big draw of college. And I think that's what maybe people who are on the fence and aren't really sure if they want to go, that's probably the feature of college that draws them to think about going to college. And then outside of that as well, even though you're paying to go to the classes and things like that, colleges offer a lot of kind of ancillary things that are very valuable as well. Study abroad programs. I know the college I went to had a college radio station where if you're interested in getting into broadcasting or something like that, that's a great opportunity to like have your own radio show on a college radio station, something that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do, or that I guess at the very least you'd have to do on your own. Fortunately, we have YouTube and podcasts and things like that to where people can do that. But there's a lot of other programs and services and things that go along with college that kind of make college worthwhile. And with the pandemic, with nobody being on campus, is it really worth paying $50,000 a year to go to the University of Illinois when you're going to be doing virtual learning? You're going to be back home in Chicago. This is for somebody in the Chicagoland area, but you're not going to be at the U of I campus. You're not going to be able to take advantage of the college radio station and the football games and the parties and the bars and everything else. You're going to be at home remote learning at your parents' house. And is that really worth $50,000 a year? Or would you say, maybe I won't go to University of Illinois. Maybe I'll go to a city college or a junior college, or just a more affordable college instead. And like I said, we've talked about, like, is college worth it? I don't want to completely write college off. I think if you're going for a very select certain degree, if you try to get your college education as affordable as possible and you're not going to some private school or going out of state just to have fun, if you do junior college the first 2 years, if you look into the ROI of that college degree and what your income will likely be after getting that degree, college may wind up being worth it. But this blanket idea that everybody needs to go off to college, which has kind of been a narrative for the past 10, 15, 20 years, is maybe no longer the case. And I did another video a while back with my buddy Jarrod Harlan If you guys search him on YouTube, I think he's got some YouTube videos up. He's a professional copywriter. And I actually had him on this channel before. We did a nice like hour and a half long interview and talk about copywriting. Really interesting video. So if you're into copywriting, check that out. But I believe in that video we talked about a program that he went through called Praxis. Now, what Praxis is kind of like a trade school for white collar jobs, or a trade school for certain kind of like office / white collar careers. I believe they have tracks in like sales, marketing, like programming and coding, copywriting, and a few other things. And it's a different spin on college, right? Rather than going to college and taking on tens, even hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, rather than tying up 4 years of your life spending time on gen ed classes that you don't really need, rather than doing all this stuff, Praxis is a 1-year program. It's the first 6 months is an intensive online study with a mentor who actually works in your industry. And the second 6 months of the program is actually a real world internship with a company in the industry that you want to work in. Praxis costs like 11 or 12 grand. They do accept only a small number of people who apply. I think it's somewhere between like 10 and 15% of people who apply. But if you do wind up getting in, it's only going to cost you 11 grand. You are earning money the second half of the program through the internship. So you're going to come out having made like 13 grand. It's only going to take 1 year of your life. You're not wasting 4 years of your life taking gen ed classes. And upon completing the program, they guarantee you a job in your industry making $50,000 a year or more. Now, compare that to going to a four-year university, being in debt somewhere between $40,000 and $200,000, tying up 4 years of your life, taking a bunch of gen eds, and really coming out of school not knowing much. I mean, like I said, if you go for accounting or medicine or certain other things, you kind of come out of school able to hit the ground running. But if you're going for like business administration, international business, marketing, you're not really coming out of college prepared to actually help a company or help a job. They're pretty much having to train you all over again. If you go to college for marketing, you're not learning anything about running PPC ads, web design, social media management. You're not learning any of this real world stuff. And by taking some of these courses, you're actually learning a lot more practical knowledge to where the day you graduate from Praxis, and this isn't a pitch to sell Praxis, but just a comparison, the day you graduate Praxis, you pretty much are in an internship, and that's going to turn into employment, as opposed to a 4-year college coming out and you're basically starting from scratch without really any real world skills. So I thought that was kind of an interesting concept, or a different spin on education in college. And I think me and Jarrod did like an hour and a half long interview. I don't think I ever got around to posting it. My girlfriend we were doing it at my house. My girlfriend walked in at the end, at the middle of the interview, and I don't think I ever wound up going back in, finding that part, editing it, and posting the video. But I might have it on a stick drive. I'll have to see about posting that. But that's kind of what this article is talking about. It is taking certifications and courses and ongoing education that's a lot more cost effective and is a lot more beneficial to you as well as your future employer. So let's take a look at this article. Again, the article is titled, "Is This the End of College as We Know It?" "I just don't see the value in a lot of what I studied," she says. "Unless they have a really specific degree in mind, we'd both prefer they take a more pragmatic, less expensive route." For traditional college students, the American post-secondary education system frequently means front-loading a lifetime's worth of formal education and going into debt to do it. That is no longer working for millions of people, and the failure is clearing the way for alternatives. Faster, cheaper, specialized credentials closely aligned with the labor market and updated incrementally over a longer period, education experts say. These new credentials aren't limited to traditional college and universities. Private industry has already begun to play a larger role in shaping what is taught and who is paying for it. For more than a century, a 4-year college degree was a blue-chip credential and a stepping stone to the American dream. For many millennials and now Gen Z, it has become an albatross around their necks. Millennials are the most educated generation in the nation's history, but they are broke compared with their predecessors. So why would they direct their children to take the same path? They probably won't, says John Thielen, a historian of higher education and professor at the University of Kentucky. Faith in 4-year degrees trace back to the 1960s, when civil rights activists pushed for everyone to attend college and become a professional. Instead of steering students towards a pragmatic, though often racist and classist two-track system in which some high school graduates headed to college and others became apprentices in a trade, the nation set a course for something more aspirational, college for all. And here's I'm not going to dive too deep into this, but here's the thought. You guys have heard of like India and the class system, right? Like if your parents are born in the lower class, you're never going to be able to break out of that and get into the upper class. And I think we think that here in the States, we don't necessarily have this class system, but I think we definitely do. And I think in a large part, I think a college degree is kind of part of the class system, right? Like if you're able to go to college, it means you're not a complete idiot. It means you probably come from a halfway decent family. It means you probably come from somewhat of a background with a little bit of money. And what made me think about this, I was watching a documentary on YouTube the other day, and they talked about, it was about Bloods in the Vietnam War. Like the Blood Gang. And in the video, they mentioned somebody said, "Well, I didn't have the money to sit out Vietnam and go to college." And it kind of got me thinking, right? Like back during the Vietnam era and the draft, we kind of said like if you're going to college, your life is worth more. If you're going to college, you don't have to go to Vietnam. Then I kind of started thinking, even if you weren't in college or even if you didn't want to go to college, if you have the money to drop on a college degree, enrolling in college was basically a way to skip and get out of Vietnam. And it's basically you were able to pay to kind of save your own life and not go to war. And I think that right there kind of highlights that college is somewhat of a class system. But that's kind of a high thought. I won't dive too deep into that. High schools began to direct students towards college prep classes and away from vocational training. The federal government started lending money to many more students to pay for college. Universities grew into manicured playgrounds. The proportion of Americans with a four-year college degree climbed to 36% last year from 9% in 1965. And I remember a story within the past couple years, I think it was the University of Arizona, spent like tens of millions of dollars building a swimming pool and this kind of like hangout area for students. And don't get me wrong, like if I were a college student, I would love to hang out with college girls in bikinis and drink beer by the pool and everything. But when we really get into like, why are we going to college and how much of those students' tuition is going to pay for things like swimming pools? And people kind of pointed this out, and the university kind of said like, look, other schools are doing this. In order to be competitive, we need to offer the same type of lifestyle and the same type of things. So it kind of becomes this thing where all this kind of ancillary stuff that doesn't have anything to do with your education, schools wind up dumping money into, whether it be sports programs, swimming pools, whatever else, to draw students in, but they're spending money. So all that goes into continuing to raise the cost of education. And the cost of education has way outpaced inflation, has way outpaced wages. And I think they say in this article, only about 20% of students are seeing an ROI on going to college. The article goes on to say, but those gains came at a price. For every high school student who graduates college and finds a job that leverages her four-year degree, 4 fall short. They either never enroll in college, drop out, or graduate and wind up underemployed, says Orrin Cass, executive director of American Compass, a conservative think tank. About half take on debt they come to regret, according to surveys. For millennials, college or bust created winners out of about 20% of the country's students and bust for the rest, says Mr. Cass. And that's an interesting point. If you start college and don't finish college, you're taking on tens of thousands of dollars worth of debt, and you have nothing to show for it at the end. I remember hearing a caller into the Dave Ramsey show, and I forget the specifics, but it was something along the lines of, I think he was going into law or he'd gone to law school. So 4 years of regular school, another I forget if law school is 2 years or 4 years, but went through, got his bachelor's, then went on to law school. And I don't know if he got a DUI or something like that, or he didn't pass the bar exam and wasn't able to take it again. But whatever the situation was, this guy went into like $150,000 worth of debt, went through all the steps, and then at the end found out that he couldn't do this career, which I believe was law. And think about that. I'm sure that degree isn't completely worthless. He could probably become a paralegal or something like that, but he's not going to make back the money to pay off that college degree. And I remember another one, I think it was a kid going to dental school, racked up like $230,000 in debt, which I think dentists can spend anywhere from $200,000 to $500,000 on their education. And for whatever reason, at the end of it, he wasn't able to become a dentist. And he's never, ever likely going to be able to pay that back. But even take somebody who goes to 1 year of college, racks up 15 or 20 grand worth of debt, and then decides college isn't for them or fails out or whatever else, you have all this debt, you wasted a year of your life, and you're back at square one. So if you start college, you better make sure that you're able to complete it. But the article goes on to say those gains come at a price for every high school student who graduates and finds a job that leverages her degree. I'm not sure why this keeps talking about her. Four fall short. They either never enroll in college, drop out, or graduate and wind up underemployed, says Orrin Cass, executive director of American. Oh, we already talked about that part. Okay. What has embittered so many millennials is that they played by the rules and still got stuck. Ben Puckett, a 30-year-old pastor in Michigan, earned a BS in physical therapy before a master's degree in divinity. He is $95,000 in debt. And some of this does come down to stupidity. I don't even know if we want to say stupidity, because I think our entire education system is kind of flawed in how we prepare people for college, or I guess I should say the lack of preparation in preparing students for college. And then at 17, 18 years old, we're asking them to choose a direction of their life and take on 50, 100, 150, $200,000 worth of debt. But what seems stupid here, this kid gets a BS in physical therapy, which is a very in-demand and very well-paying degree. And he completes that, and instead of either getting a job or continuing on in physical therapy, where he'd probably wind up making $100,000 to $150,000 a year, he winds up, because master's programs aren't cheap, he winds up dropping a bunch of money to get a master's degree in divinity. Like, are you going to be a physical therapist priest? Like, I don't really get that. And there are a lot of people who hop degrees, hop schools, and wind up costing themselves a lot of money. If you are going to go to college, do it in a way that is smart, and don't go to a private school, don't go to an out-of-state school. Get your gen eds done at a community college where it can be done affordable. Try to get as many grants and scholarships as you can, and then go to an affordable four-year college to finish up the rest of your time. But I think even though the system itself is flawed, there's a lot of stupidity among people in how they go about pursuing their education as well. I went to college because I was told by parents, friends, teachers, and counselors that it was the only way to ensure a good future. And I can definitely relate to that. When I was going in college, I'm sure a lot of you guys, or when I was going to high school, I should say, and I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate to this, the narrative from your parents, your teachers, your guidance counselor was, if you don't want to dig ditches or if you don't want to flip burgers, you better go to college. And nobody really talked about trade schools. Nobody talked about getting a certificate in radiology, or becoming a mechanic or going into the trades. Like, everything was like college, college, college. And it really didn't matter if you had a direction that you thought you wanted to go to college. It really didn't matter if you were cut out for college. The message was like, no matter what, just to go to college. It doesn't matter if you get a degree in basket weaving, just get that piece of paper. And I think in a lot of ways, college isn't about getting an education. College isn't about getting an education. College is about getting a job, right? It's preparing you to get a job. It's not necessarily trying to educate you. If it was as simple as education, you could go out and get a lot of these skills on your own, or you could you could take some type of like short-term course or program that's a lot shorter and a lot more cost-effective. But still, to some extent, there's this kind of like, I don't know if you want to call it stigma, but there's this thing where with certain companies, especially larger companies, Fortune 500 companies, you're not even going to be able to get an interview without that piece of paper. You're not going to be able to get a promotion without that piece of paper. And I think slowly that kind of narrative is changing. I think slowly people are realizing that there's not necessarily an ROI on college. And I have pretty much all my cousins are teachers, and I was talking to a few of them at the last kind of holiday get-together or birthday party, whatever it was. And I kind of expected them to be very like supportive of education. And I kind of made a comment, I really don't see an ROI on college. Like, not that college is going to go away, but I think people are going to start looking at college a lot differently, and I don't think it's worth it for most people. And to my surprise, a bunch of my cousins who were teachers kind of agreed with me and were like, yeah, I'm not really encouraging all the kids to go to college like I would have 5 or 10 years ago. It's just not the best path for everybody. There's not an ROI in it for everybody. He goes on to say, this is the kid that we were talking about. I went on to college because I was told by parents, friends, teachers, and counselors that it was the only way to ensure a good future. At 18 years old, how was I supposed to defy what my school, parents, society, and friends were saying about going to college? And that's a good point. Even though there is a lot of stupidity on the part of kids and students and young adults, to some extent, when society has been molding you for 18 years of your life through school and everything else to go to college, it's kind of hard to buck that and say, oh, I'm going to start my own business, or, oh, I'm going to go get a certification in doing, X, Y, Z. College graduates born in the 1980s are less able to build wealth compared with earlier generations. Since 2013, student debt has grown by around $600 billion. The flagging value proposition is now catching up to colleges. Between 1979 and 2010, enrollment at 2- and 4-year colleges and universities more than doubled to 18 million. Since then, it has fallen by about 2 million as the number of high school graduates shrinks and the return on investment for graduates flattens. To adapt, more schools are offering larger tuition discounts, forcing many of them to cut costs, edging them closer to a death spiral. The pandemic and the resulting economic anxiety have accelerated these trends. Many colleges are unable to adapt their programs and to keep up with changing demands in the labor market. Hundreds of schools will close over the next few years, analysts predict. And I think to a large part, this is kind of colleges' fault themselves. They're being very inefficient. They pay administrators $500,000 a year and have a shitload of those highly paid administrators. They're building swimming pools and gyms as opposed to trying to kind of cut the cost of education. And they're just so hungry for money that they're encouraging people to take on stupid degrees that aren't going to make them any money just because they need as many people pouring money into that college as possible. I was just kind of joking with a friend the other day. The other day, a friend of mine got one of those letters from their college that are like, hey, would you like to consider donating money to the alumni thing? It's like, I paid you guys $60,000 and you're still hitting me up for money years and years later. Like, I'm going to be in student loan debt until I die, and you're still trying to get fucking money out of me. Get the fuck out of here. Americans aren't turning their backs on education. They are reconsidering how to obtain it. Enrollment in short-term credential classes during the pandemic increased by 70% to nearly 8 million over the same period last year, according to Jonathan Finkelstein, chief executive of Credly, a digital credentialing network that increase came as freshman college enrollment dropped by 16%. What are your thoughts? What do you think needs to be changed about the college system, if anything? Join the conversation below. So we'll take a look at the comments before we cut out here. I know we're 22 minutes into this already. Coding boot camps, which started only a decade ago and teach students software skills in a few months, graduate around 30,000 students in the U.S. last year. The number of apprenticeships nearly doubled to more than 700,000 between 2012 and 2019, according to the Labor Department, and they are expanding beyond trades into white-collar industries like banking and insurance. California has plans in place to increase apprenticeships in the state to 500,000 from 75,000 by 2029. And here where they're talking about like white-collar trade schools, that's kind of what I was talking about with what Jarrod went through, a program like Praxis. Companies like Alphabet Inc., Google, Amazon.com Inc., and Microsoft Corp. Are launching programs which certify vocational competence and lead to well-paying tech jobs in or outside of their companies. In August, Google announced scholarships for 100,000 students for a 6-month online certificate, including one in data science. The company said it would treat the certificates as the equivalent of a 4-year degree if students apply for a related role at Google. As critical mass of companies and nonprofits launch their own credentials that become valuable in the labor market, traditional colleges will lose their monopoly, says Christopher Deed, a professor at Harvard Graduate School of Education and author of the 60-year curriculum. And here's an interesting thing. The college I went to was a college of, I don't know, maybe 10 to 15,000 students here in Illinois. When I went there, it was a thriving school. Again, there were 10, 15,000 students there. The school was doing well. They were known for having a very good education program for putting out teachers. And when I went there, it was great. The dorms were filled. There were a lot of students living off campus. And a number of years have gone by. I swing by there every now and again. Whenever I go on a camping trip every year down to Southern Illinois, Garden of the Gods. And when I drive down there, I go right by my old college. So I always get off the expressway. I'll go drive by and look at the old houses I used to live in at college, and I'll go grab a burger from my favorite burger place down there. And the last time we were down there, I was looking at some rental properties because houses tend to be cheap in college town. Rents seem to be pretty high. And, because it's a college town, you almost always, prior to the pandemic, had plenty of students who would rent from you. Well, to my surprise, housing prices were even cheaper. And when I dug into it a little bit further, I learned that enrollment at my former college was down by about 50%. They had closed several of the dorms, including the freshman dorm, because they didn't have enough students and didn't have enough money to keep them open. And some of the off-campus housing that was by some of these dorms, that used to be like very desirable campus housing, had turned into housing just for people who live in the town, gotten kind of sketchy, like a lot of meth heads, a lot of drug dealers from Chicago down there selling drugs to all the meth heads. And it just, the college campus, the entire atmosphere down there wasn't the same. And I was like, it would really suck to own a rental property down here if this school winds up shutting down, because all you have at this point is a small town with no industry 3 hours from Chicago with nothing going on in it. But it's a whole nother story. But it looks like a lot of colleges across the country are kind of facing that exact issue. The minute you have enough groups from industry or the military or nonprofits validate these things, you provide a way of bypassing educational institutions, and that will open the door to people not having to get a bachelor's degree as a warrant to enter the workplace, Mr. Deed says. The question is whether this model can supplant the massive symbolic value of a 4-year degree earned straight after high school. A 2019 Kaplan Inc. survey of 2,000 parents found that 74% favor a pathway for students to go straight from high school to a full-time job while taking college classes. College for all has been a catastrophically bad system. It has to change, says Orrin Cass, executive director of American Compass, a conservative think tank. What's missing from this rising model is a sort of coming-of-age experience that students crave. Still, the pandemic has chipped away at a belief that it must take place through a 4-year stint on a college campus. Groups of students unable to return to campus this year have rented houses and hotels to live with their classmates while taking classes online. And that kind of goes to talk about how important that college experience is, right? That, it's kind of, for those who are fortunate enough to be able to do it, it kind of provides a little gap between high school and entering the real world, where you get to be an adult and have fun, but you don't necessarily have a ton of responsibility. You get to be around your peers. And I think the fact that students are apparently renting houses and doing all this while taking classes online, even though they're not on campus, goes to show either how ingrained or how important of the whole college picture that college experience is. Elite schools like Harvard and Yale University will survive and even thrive, but occupy a smaller place in the popular imagination, much like prep schools today, says Johns Hopkins political scientist Benjamin Ginsberg. Less elite schools trying to stay relevant, have begun offering shorter programs and creating longer partnerships with students, such as giving alumni the chance to brush up on skills through online classes. 4-year degrees will get telescoped into 3 and eventually 2 years, says Scott Pullifer, president of Western Governors University. Academic credit will increasingly be given for work experience, and workers will return to school more frequently as the half-life of their skills shortens because of the accelerating pace of technological change. The shift will eventually generate Americans with more education from a broader array of institutions that will create pressure for public funding to follow the education people want, says Mr. Cass, author of The Once and Future Worker. Federal and state governments subsidize colleges and universities with hundreds of billions of dollars. That money benefits just a sliver of students. What about everybody else? Mr. Cass argues students should be able to apply for whatever education or training they want to pursue. College for all has been a catastrophically bad system, he says. It has to change. Getting a college degree is no longer the only or the smartest way to invest in human capital. Those who think more broadly will prosper in the years ahead, writes columnist Greg IP. Plus, experts weigh in on how to get better returns from early childhood to on-the-job training. As university budgets are squeezed and students' debt loads rise, an era of close-knit relationships between companies and universities is getting underway. 3 proposals to build on temporary relief measures enacted during COVID-19 pandemic. Harvard and Columbia's business schools are starting to offer certificates and lifelong learning to their programs, a shift that could transform business education in the years ahead. And here's something I was kind of saying before is, if you come out of school with a degree in marketing, you really know nothing about how to actually market in the real world. You maybe know something about statistics and analytics and some big picture stuff, but you don't really know anything if you were to start a marketing agency. And so I hear a lot of people say, like, should I go get a college degree in digital marketing or entrepreneurship? And I think that's kind of worthless. I don't know if any of you guys have ever checked out a book on selling on eBay, selling on Amazon, digital marketing, social media, like a book on any of those topics on the library. from the library, because these industries move so quick and everything changes so quick. A book that was published at the beginning of the year is completely irrelevant 3 months into the year, because TikTok didn't have ads. Now TikTok does have ads. Facebook used to work this way. Now it doesn't. With Amazon, you used to be able to buy reviews. You used to be able to send out free products in exchange for reviews. That changed, and these are just a couple examples. But everything today in general, but especially in the world of entrepreneurship and digital marketing, everything is changing so rapidly that an outdated educational system like college just can't manage to keep up with it, and therefore doesn't really wind up teaching you anything. But this has kind of turned into a long video. We're at 30 minutes. I won't ramble on too much longer. Let me know your guys' thoughts about this. Let me know, have you used your college degree to date? Do you think college degrees are worthwhile for people looking to be entrepreneurs and own their own business? Do you think college degrees are even necessary, or could somebody learn skills on their own and venture off into digital marketing or similar industries? Would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this subject, so go ahead and drop a comment below. If you enjoyed today's video, give it a thumbs up, and if you're not subscribed to the channel, click that subscribe button below. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys on the next video.